Very sorry for the interruption. So I welcome all of you, all the participants. I welcome Dr. Arun Kumar also, who has graced this occasion. He was very busy and he took some time to come here. Dr. Pawan Kumar and all the participants who have been tirelessly present for the last 3-4 days. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Pawan Kumar, who is the speaker today for this session. He is professor and head of Institute Counseling Services, NIT Rourkela. He completed his MSc in physics in the year 2000 from MDU Rohtak, Haryana. And after qualifying JRF NET of CSIR UGC twice, June and December 2000, completed PhD in 2004 from Department of Physics, IIT Delhi. When I was there as a postdoc, we used to have quite of interaction, and we had a very nice, we were together there and we had a nice time there regarding the academics and all other type of pursuits, experimental and all everything. Working in Department of Physics and Astronomy at NIT Rourkela since 2006, he receives the prestigious Boys Cast Fellowship by DST at Penn State, USA for 2007-2008. And for any academic or maybe a researcher who is working in the field of ferroelectrics, that is a dream for that particular person to go to Penn State. I hope I am right, and Pawan will also agree with this. He was selection committee member of Bihar Public Service Commission during May 2016 and June 2017 for the selection of the assistant professors here in Bihar. He has held HOD post of Department of Physics and Astronomy, NIT Rourkela during 2016 and 18. He has developed electroceramic laboratory at NIT Rourkela. He had 8 number of PhD students, and 9 are presently continuing as PhD students. He has handled 11 research projects, published 96 research papers in international peer-reviewed journals. Research interest includes synthesis and characterization of bulk, thin, and nano-functional materials and composite systems by employing various synthesis techniques such as solid-state reaction route, chemical route, combustion technique, microwave processing techniques, sol gel technique, RF sputtering, and high energy ball milling process. Presently, he is also working in the field of perovskite materials for solar cells and photodetector application. So today, Dr. Pawan Kumar will be speaking on the microwave assisted high energy ball milling processing for the functional oxide materials. So with this introduction, I would like to invite Dr. Pawan to start his talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So for giving me this opportunity to share my work.
Your sound is coming very low.
Okay, just a minute.
आवाज बहुत धीमी आ रही है पवन.
Yeah, just a minute. My screen is visible.
Screen is okay, but your sound is very low.
Okay, just a minute. Is coming, ma'am? Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. Sound is coming now.
Yeah, it is okay. Very much fine.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. So, thank you very much, Seema ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to share my work. Okay. So, I think this screen sidewise screen. Okay, fine. Okay, so welcome you all, the participants in this Atal FTV program. So in this talk, I'll be talking about the microwave assisted solid state synthesis of functional materials. And also I'll be talking about this high energy ball milling synthesis of the functional materials. So I have made two parts of this presentation. First, means I'm starting with the microwave assisted solid state reaction synthesis of functional materials. So I'll be talking about the basic steps of any material processing. If we want to synthesize, so the general steps, and then in particular, I will be talking about this microwave processing basics, and then we'll be taking the some case studies of this BFN, CC2, and SBN functional materials, what we have synthesized by using this microprocessing technique. And then we'll be of course, discussing the advantages of this processing technique. So what I will be doing means like after this BFN and SBN ceramics, then I will summarize what the results we obtained, and then after discussing the CC2 results, I will be summarizing what the main highlights of our works are. And of course, after that one, I will be taking the second part of this talk, this high energy ball milling assisted solid state reaction synthesis of functional material. So okay, so so now means this. Of course, those who are working in this functional materials field, particularly experimental field, so means they must be aware about this the basic steps of synthesizing any functional material. Like these are the initially when we take this our starting precursors in the stoichiometric proportion, then we go for the drying with our starting precursors. They involve some they are in the liquid form, and then we go for a kind of milling, so that we get the uniform particle size of the starting precursors. And then we go for the calcination step, and this calcination is the stage where the phase formation of the material takes place. So that process what we call as the calcination process. And then we go for like this. Of course, this has calcination, this synthesis reactions, that this calcination process involves these steps. And then we means depending on our material, then we add the binders, and then we give a particular shape to our calcine powders, and then we go for the sintering stage actually, where our material is means in a particular form, it's being imparted the mechanical strength actually. And of course, these other terms are there from metallurgical point of view. These steps in general, I'm quoting all these steps, but to our work, we are mainly concerned with the of course, the milling stage, then the calcination stage. Calcination, as I'm just repeating, where the reactions of the between the starting precursors takes place. Then this binder addition, and this of course after that one, what we say as the giving a particular shape to our calcine powders, and then the sintering. And of course, for electrical characterization, then we means put the metallic coating on the sintered materials, and we go for the electrical characterizations, and we see it's different characteristics, and see it's about its applications actually. Okay, so now coming to means we have seen in the previous slide that in any particularly functional material field, this heating of the material, either in the case of the calcination or in the sintering stage, the heating is the main process actually. And so this heating process, it can be divided into means two parts, what we call as one as the direct heating methods, another is the non contact heating method. So what we means what is the demarcation between these two, like under this direct contact heating methods, these various processes are there: thermal, which involve the conduction, radiation, convection, the laser heating, the plasma heating, electrical heating, IR, UV heating, and all these type of heating and non-contact methods. The demarcation is basically that in the case of direct contact heating method, the heating source is outside the samples, and that like heat flows, means our materials comes into contact with the this external heat which is coming from the outside, and then heat flows from outside to inside actually. So this is what we call as our material is actually the whole chamber within that where our sample is placed, that is exposed to the generated heat there actually. Whereas in the case of non-contact heating methods, there means the heating setup is such that that heat is generated within the our sample actually inside, and of course we'll be I'll be discussing these non-contact heating methods. So heat is generated inside the our samples, and then heat flows from inside to outside actually. And so why that what happens is that means this power is consumed only by the samples which means in which the heat is produced inside actually, and so the power is saved via this non-contact heating method. Of course we will be seeing that one. And so this is like the difference between the direct contact heating methods and non-contact heating methods. And now will means the as the topic of this talk is the microwave assisted synthesis of functional materials. So I'm taking I'll be discussing about this non-contact heating methods. They are, as it was mentioned in the previous slide, there are of three categories: induction heating, radio frequency heating, and microwave heating actually. And so what these are there actually, as I told, we'll see means that heat is generated inside the material. And of course I'll discuss all these three cases, and then I'll be picking up the microwave processing technique actually. So in this induction heating, the basic physics is very simple actually. At the school level what we learn actually, like there is this coil is there, metallic coil is there, and in the coil this AC current is passed, and in between this between the coils there's our specimen is inserted, which we want to heat actually. And what happens that the AC power is supplied actually, and current is flowing, and the magnetic field will be produced. And this because the current is AC, so this magnetic field will change actually. It will change, and this changing magnetic field, it will produce the eddy currents in this specimen and of course here also this under this induction heating, these are what we see the limitations comes the only metallic type of substance they can be heated actually. Well, like there the eddy currents will be produced, means will be more actually. And while this Joule heating effect, like this eddy currents, they will be converted to the heat, and via that our specimen will get heated up. And that's how we exploit this what we say this non-contact heating here in this induction heating, that what we exploit for heating our specimen, and use for various purposes like this surface hardening, melting, brazing, forging, soldering, and coating, this type of applications what we use. And but as I told that this is restricted only for electrically conducting materials actually. And it has its own advantages. It's very fast, and the uniform entire body heating takes place, and Okay, and this efficient and of course clean also. But as I told that the main disadvantage is like only this metallic specimen, they can only be process, they can only be used in this induction heating actually. So this is one of the like examples of non-contact heating method. Now we are taking up the next one, what we call as the radio frequency or RF heating actually. So here also the principle remains the same, but somewhat the frequency, like the like means what is supplied, or the power supplied at the frequency corresponding to this different frequencies: 13.56 megahertz, 27.12 megahertz, 40.6 megahertz actually, because means these frequencies, they falls in the communication spectrum also. So these frequencies are limited actually, like not all the frequencies are allowed, so that it doesn't interfere the communication. So now here what happens, the basic physics is simple, like this our specimen. So again here the limitation in the sense that only the polar material, polar specimen in which the dipoles are present, that what we call as the polar materials, polar molecules, like they can only be processed via that one. So now coming to this the basic physics, like when we means, put this our specimen between the electrodes, where this frequency is in the RF spectrum region. So the dipoles present inside our specimen, they will try to follow the changing frequency of the applied electric field, and in turn kind of friction means due to the kind of friction type, due to the rotation of the dipoles, heat will be generated inside the specimen actually. Here also heat is generated inside. So please try to see the difference with respect to the direct direct contact heating method. So here the heat is means generated inside the samples, and that's how like uh, then heat will flow from inside to the outside actually. And in a sense, because throughout the whole our specimen, these dipoles are big, they are present, so they will try to follow the applied electric field, and in turn the heat will be produced uniformly throughout the whole specimen actually. And this is the big advantage of this non-contact heating methods, that heating is uniform actually. Whereas the very big problem in the direct contact heating method is that when the heat flows from outside to inside, so a kind of thermal gradient, due to a kind of thermal gradient in the specimen, the our specimen gets heated up differently. What the temperature is there at the surface, and what the temperature specimen experience in the interior, they are different. So and so we get kind of sometimes it's like at different points, different like in the specimen, if you put the electrode at different points, we get different properties. And so that is due to this like non-uniform heating. That is of course the like non-uniform applying like this the when we are giving a particular shape, if the pressure is also not uniform, that is also one of the cause of the like if the specimen doesn't show the properties same at each point actually. So but here in the case like this heating, the non-uniform property to heating, that is that can be avoided by this non-contact heating method actually. So now this again applications of this RF heating method is there in the like for drying operations, in the particular in the industries, polymers, textiles. There they are being used. And as I just told that by nature of how the heat is produced, the heating is uniform. It's fast and efficient, clean, no wastage is there. And that is the bigger advantage of this non-contact heating method that is being shown in highlighting the next slide, of course. And but of course here the disadvantage is the low temperatures are being can only be produced via this one, and somewhat costly actually this whole setup, this technique compared to the direct contact heating method. And here as I was telling, just but from large industrial production wise, like cost can be minimized. And here that is for the this matchbox drying, this RF heating technique is being used, and the energy cost comes down to 1/6 of the convection drying actually. Now we and of course we can appreciate this point because the whole technique of heat production is totally different compared to the what it is there in the direct direct heating, direct contact heating method actually. So so it's a big advantage actually. This 1/6 is too much actually, like this energy cost saving actually. So this was about the RF heating technique. Now I'm taking this just a minute. I'm taking this microwave microwave non-contact heating technique. So here just the basics of this technique, microwave. So now they are the, of course, they are nothing but the electromagnetic radiations whose frequencies lies between 300 megahertz to 300 gigahertz, and the corresponding wavelengths 1 millimeter to 1 meter to 1 millimeter, and the corresponding energies also in terms of the electron volt of the order of 10 between 10 to the minus 3 electron volt to 10 to the minus 6 electron volt. And these and of course the energies, they are much lower than the usual ionization energies and the covalent bond energies, hydrogen bonds. So that why this point is highlighted, so that the when we we expose our material to the microwaves, that then this ionizations and this bond they will not be broken actually. Rather means only the microwave will interact via means like only the dipoles while dipole interactions the dipole interaction will only be taking place with the microwaves actually. And of course again, as I told in the case of the RF heating, that here for since these microwaves they comes in the communication spectrum actually. So these particular frequencies are being allowed for use in this for this microwaves. This O1s also we use, and for this domestic industrial research applications, these particular frequencies are being they are being allowed 915 megahertz to 0.45 gigahertz, and then the frequency between 20 to 30 gigahertz actually. So and so now here I'll be discussing, of course, we are using 2.45 gigahertz. Again, this in terms of the electromagnetic radiation spectrum, just to highlight, there are of course different spectrums are there, starting from the microwave, the infrared, and the ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. So our these microwaves, as I told, that it falls in the this communication spectrum actually there. And so why these frequencies are restricted actually, which can be used for this research or domestic applications actually. So now coming to the the interactions of microwave with the different types of materials. So now here the how the microwave they interact in the case of the bulk metals. So the bulk metals, they are opaque to the when we expose them to the microwaves, and they are the good reflectors actually. Okay, so of course, the basic physics very simple actually. Like metals, the free electrons are there. The electron, the free electrons, they absorb the incident microwaves, and immediately they then reflect also. That's what is metals. So they are opaque and they are good reflectors. Okay, and these insulators, of course, they're like as we have seen the case, there's dielectric materials, the materials in which the like dipoles are there. They means dipoles, they can interact with the microwaves, and via that interactions, these microwaves, they are being absorbed by the insulating materials, and in turn the material get heated up actually. And semiconducting materials, they are in between the metals and the insulators. And here on the right hand side we can see the how the microwave power is being absorbed, and with respect to the corresponding loss in the material actually. And so now of course, as we know, there's metallic material, the loss is very high, so they are the good reflectors of the microwaves. And this insulating materials, of course, in which there are no dipoles are there, and then they will become a kind of the microwave can pass through those materials. So now in between the material which have a kind of optimum type of dielectric loss, and wire means, so generally who are working in this functional material, particularly ferroelectric materials field, we try to minimize the loss actually, dielectric loss. That is one of our aim. But here what means, we are seeing this if the material is having high dielectric loss, but then it becomes a better candidate for microwave processing actually. So of course as we have seen in the case, all these non-contact heating methods, these heating methods, they are material specific. Material specific means that it depends the type of the material which is being processed. It depends. It's not you take any material and put in this type of non-contact heating setups, and that it will get heated up. No, means it depends on the what are the characteristics of these materials actually. So here also, as of course this will be highlighted in the next slide. And like here we can see that microwave absorbance depends on the various properties of the material actually, and it is microwave absorption power is being shown as a function of the frequency and of course the dielectric loss factor, then the magnetic loss factor also, and of course both on the electrical as well as the magnetic characteristics of the material actually depends. So now, so that indicates that microwave heating is a material specific process actually, because means two materials having different all these characteristic, electrical magnetic characteristics, they will be processed differently, means when we are exposing to the same power of the microwaves. Okay, and this is the reason actually, because microwave power absorbance depends on all these proper characteristic of material actually. So now coming to this the main components involved in the this microwave heating technique actually. What are like, of course, this insulations, this is a part, this in the conventional, like our conventional furnaces also we use this insulation. So same here also, susceptor, this susceptor, what we say the secondary heater. I'll be discussing this part actually in the, like, when I will be discussing about the general setup of this microwave furnace actually, and what is the utility of this susceptor. And there is a big issue of temperature measurement in this microwave processing technique. So, and of course, like this particular frequency we use, that also means we choose actually means like as we have seen there's a whole spectrum is there of the microwaves actually. So now coming to this means one by one these issues like this insulation. So there are this insulating material what do we use for in the microwave furnace. That material they should have these characteristics. They should have high thermal resistance so that the like heat doesn't easily doesn't go out and inside the chamber means. And of course they should have low thermal conductivity means they are interlinked actually, and they should have low dielectric loss. Why that is because means so that microwave can easily pass through the insulations and it can reach to the our specimen and our specimen get heated up actually. So this means the process of selecting the particular insulating our material or the medium, we require these characteristics actually. And there are these various insulating materials they are there, and depending on our requirements we choose but the main characteristics these three characteristics are there. They should have thermal resistance, low thermal conductivity, and they should have low dielectric loss. And so that's how this is how do we choose the insulating material in the microwave heating setup. Now, as I told that there is a big issue related to the temperature measurement in the microwave heating process actually. And what is the issue? Issue is that since there's ordinary like there's standard thermocouples. What do we use for temperature measurement? The conventional furnaces they involve this metallic bead, and to know the temperature, we put that means we want that. Of course, in the conventional heating, that the whole chamber is being heated up, and so means we kind of we assume whatever the like in the whole chamber, whatever the temperature is there, that same temperature is experienced by our specimen actually. And of course, the thermal gradient is also there, but we expose our specimen for long duration actually. So and there this and so that this thermal gradient will be minimized because the time duration is high actually. So now in the case of microwave heating, as we have seen that only the specimen is being heated up. So for so in this case, if we want to measure the temperature, then the thermocouple should be as close as possible near to the specimen actually. Okay, because only the specimen is getting heated up actually. So now if we bring our this standard thermocouples near to the specimen, then these microwaves they are being coming from the magnetron toward the specimen. And so this as we have seen the material interactions with the different category of materials, this this metallic bead of the thermocouples, they will reflect the incident microwaves. They will not allow or they will obstruct the microwaves coming to the like falling on the specimen actually. So it's a kind of it's what we say is a big disadvantage. And so now because of that it's a temperature measuring the temperature in the microwave furnace is a big issue. We cannot use these standard thermocouples. So then what are the alternatives actually? So then it is what we say this non-contact what we say pyrometer or this thermometers, that what we have to use to measure the temperatures actually. And means via means for that for this we need to know the emissivity of the materials, and we have to calibrate means how much heat is being generated, and via that these pyrometers, they are being calibrated, and the temperatures are being measured actually. So now here what happens ki that these optical, particularly optical or infrared IR pyrometers, the temperature measurement starts what we have in our lab, means minimum means temperature measurement 250 degrees Celsius actually. More than that we can measure only. So because the below the infrared below this 250, the radiations coming below that is that they are not detected, the signal is so weak actually. And so that of course we are working, we are processing the material at very high temperatures. So but people who are working who want to use the microwave and to be used at a low temperatures, so then they need a particular type of setup to measure the temperatures for so this is so this is an issue. And we use these non-contact heating thermocouple, means what we say pyrometers, to measure the temperatures. So now this slide just highlights actually how the heat is produced inside the material actually, like the means the central part is red, and it's being so here inside the material, the heat, this microwave, they are being absorbed actually. And like this outer, I mean, so the outside the specimen, since no, if let us say no this materials or kind of air is present, then means the microwaves are not absorbed. So no means what we say, no heating effect will be there actually. And of course means each one of us must be having the experience. If you put the water in the tumbler in the microwave oven actually, like the tumbler means it's a insulating material, non-polar actually, like microwave they easily pass through it, whereas the water inside the tumbler, like it's a polar actually, it absorbs the microwaves actually. The water inside becomes means it gets heated up actually. So the inside one only the, so is we use this what we say, this microwaves. And of course the side point actually, but this is not advised actually, like this microwaves ovens, they're not advised, what we say, preferred for cooking purpose. So there's an issue. If some of you will means want to discuss, we will discuss later on actually. But this is advised not to use microwave for cooking purpose. So here we are concerned with the material processing. And so now here what the furnace what we have in our lab actually, this is the general schematic diagram, the particular furnace actually. So here these silicon carbide susceptor are there. I'll be discussing what is the role of the susceptors actually. And this of course the magnetrons are there, microwaves are being produced, and then they are like here this what we say, the in this furnace this hole is there, and here our IR sensor is there on the top actually. And then via means here our this specimen is there, our sample is there. So now this is the general schematic diagram of any microwave furnace. So what happens actually, this susceptor, why they are being there? Ideally the susceptor should not be there if we strictly call that we want to process our material in the microwaves only actually. So but in general there means what happens, like the starting precursors, they might be non-polar actually, okay. And so they will not absorb the microwaves actually. But then this silicon carbide susceptor, they are good microwave absorbers. So they will absorb the microwaves, and it's a kind like they're very close to the specimen actually. And so when they will get heated up, it's a kind of like heating rods, silicon carbide heating rods, of course that type of things, and then heat will flow from like from the silicon carbide to the specimen, and it's kind of direct contact heating type of things takes place actually, and the heat will be supplied to the specimen, and the precursor, they will absorb the this heat, they will react among themselves, and and once this reactions takes place, then if the dipoles are formed within the specimen, this our this starting these precursors, then this microwave will be directly absorbed by the our specimen actually. And the silicon carbide, they have limitation, they can absorb like the maximum, like here particularly what we have here by microwave, what they are absorbing, the corresponding temperature what they can raise near about 500 degrees Celsius. Up to that, they can that much temperature they can supply via microwave absorbance to the specimen, and near about that like our kind of reactions start taking place, and dipoles start forming if there are no dipoles, the starting precursors, and then so they will start interacting the microwaves, and they will absorb, and temperature will rise, and more the temperature, if more reaction will take place, and kind of that type of things takes place, and means via that this is the role of the susceptor what I was talking about actually. So but as I told, ideally, like if our material is polar material, then we should not use susceptor. This silicon susceptor directly our specimen, this will absorb the microwaves actually. So this is about the general microwave is furnace components. And of course, again, as I told, this just to highlight the difference between the conventional heating and the microwave. Here we can appreciate heat is like from the heating elements. This heat is coming from like this is our sample specimen is there, and heat comes from outside and to the inside. So there is a, as I was talking about, there is a thermal gradient. Actually, thermal gradient is there, and at the top the temperature will be more, and inside the temperature will be less. But in the case of via microwave heating, the means it is totally opposite to the conventional heating actually. Heat flows from inside to the outside actually. Okay, and so this is totally different mechanism is there. So the same sample, they are being processed by the microwaves and the conventionals. Since the total heating mechanism is totally different, so we'll be getting the different characteristics, different properties of the same material actually. And so what happens actually in general, like there are various, of course, as I was talking about, the various precursors are there. Some of them are like what we say, the good micro absorbers are there, dipoles are there, some there are no dipoles are there. So to have uniform heating, if we have kind of hybrid type of microwave furnace, and like this was there in the silicon carbide type of things. So when the heating takes place both via the this direct contact heating and this non-contact heating via microwave absorbance. So a kind of like uniform heating will take place throughout the sample via the hybrid mode actually. That's what we had furnace earlier. Now, but we have that has gone bad, and we have right now this only the microwave actually. Okay, so this was just to highlight. Now we are going to take the case studies. As I told that there are various case studies we'll take, and as I told means by this time hopefully means we must be getting that this of course we are going to take the microwave heating, microwave processing of this functional materials, and among these functional materials, the materials having dipoles, what we call as the dielectrics, they are the better candidate to be processed via microwave heating actually. So so these dielectrics, depending on their dielectric properties, they are being classified in terms of the class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. And means of course earlier means when I was doing PhD, it was mean there it was the means general uh, convention ki only this ferroelectric material they can have the dielectric constant actually. And but the now means there are the non-ferroelectric materials are there which have very high dielectric constant actually. But the big issue with those type of material is that their loss is high actually. So this remains a big issue for like means. But as I told earlier, that become an advantage for the microwave if you want to process the material via the microwave heating. So here that what we have taken up. So these I'll be, as I told, these are two known ferroelectric materials. This is what we say, the CC2O and the BFN. They have very high dielectric constant at room temperature, more than 10,000 1 kilohertz frequencies, and of course their loss is high actually. So as I told, but that is what we want actually if we want to process these materials. So this is just the basics about this BFN system. It's a perovskite, like it has perovskite phase, and initially there was some controversy that is a ferroelectric, but it means it's established that this is a non-ferroelectric system, because as I told that earlier, this understanding was they are only ferroelectric material that they can only have the high dielectric constant actually. So now means in the case of this BFN system, so here we have done the calcination at 1250 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes. As let me highlight here actually that this the main characteristics, since the heating mechanism is totally different, so the heating temperatures and the time durations is very less in the microwave heating compared to the conventional heating actually. So but here we chose this 1250 degrees Celsius. Actually, we synthesize the same compound by the conventional heating also. So there we optimize this calcination, the sinking temperature. So what we did actually, we use the same processing temperature, but we only varied the this time actually. Okay, then calcination temperature also means I'll be showing that we varied 15, 30 and 45 minutes. Maximum we have gone up to, in this particular case we gone up to like 45, 1 hour also we use, but that is too much actually for the microwaves actually. Means 15, 30 minutes is too much. I mean, that is more than sufficient actually. So as means and that highlights the advantage of the microwave processing. And of course, let me tell here itself that in general, I'm saying in general, what happens since the time involved in the microwave processing is very, very small. So if our starting material, they are of the nano size order, or the like since the time duration, the time during which we expose the microwaves is very small. So the in general, substantial grain growth will not take place. So we will have a kind of uniform type of grain we should have. In general, I'm saying again, but it depends on the type of the materials. As I told earlier, because this whole heating mechanism is material specific. So it depends on the choice of the material actually. So and again, as I told, since we synthesize the same compound via both the microwave and the conventional heating. So here, just to appreciate the time duration, how much it means it is involved in the microwave heating. It's near about if we could just this slide is talking about only the sintering profile actually. For the, let me first talk about the conventional heating. We heat up, there's a holding time for the binder burnout. Then we again heat up, and then holding time is normally normally 4 hours, depending on the choice of the material actually. And then of course, then the cooling is there. We have to cool, and so roughly is in general time comes out to be means near about 13-14 hours actually. Okay, in the conventional sintering process. But in the case of the microwave heating, just you just see within less than 1 hour actually that this whole sintering process is being completed. On one hand, there's a 14 hours, another hand there's a 1 hour. So that's what was there actually. So there's like a lot of energy is saved via this microwave heating process. And here this SCM micrographs. Here, this one is the conventional sintered BFN system micrographs, and this one they are the microwave sintered, and we can see that they are very dense. So the very dense microstructure is there, and of course, we'll be seeing the electrical properties wise also. So here the time duration 1350 watt time duration was the 4 hours actually, and here the 15, 30 and 45 minutes actually, and we are getting very compact, very dense microstructures. But it's as I told, it's material specific. In general, mostly we get the small grain size, but here in the case of the BFN, they are the good microwave absorbers, and the small time durations. This grain growth is rapid actually, so we got bigger grains actually. So that what we observed. So now just to compare, there were this electrical and of course this density properties of this BFN system, by a conventional processed and the microwave process. So density what we obtain means we are getting the near about the same density, but in a very small time durations actually. Okay, of course the grain size was also very high. This is about density. Let us see. Of course, that's what we have seen in the this density increases with the increase of the time when we increase the time durations, during which of course we have, as I told, we have gone for 1 hour, but 1 hour for microprocessing is too high, and our whole with this melting started in the inside the material actually. So just but we obtained the same density what we obtained by the conventional heating. Now just let us appreciate here the dielectric properties, because this BFN is a high dielectric constant material, and you just see here the dielectric constant at room temperature near about 16,500 1 kilohertz frequency. And in the case of like the microwave sintered samples, we obtain near about 30,000 actually, near about doubled, and lows also is it means it was it very much it reduced actually. It's in this dielectric constant known for electric system. It's a big issue, the dielectric loss. So we exploited the dielectric loss factor, and we obtained the better dielectric properties in the case of this BFN system actually. And so this was the case of the BFN. As I told, I have to be little fast actually. This is the means another system what we took, the strontium barium niobate systems is a tungsten bronze structure ferroelectric system. That what we took, and to process this via this microwave processing technique, which a particular means a particular this composition, this material as this BFN. It has its application in the like it's a high dielectric constant, and this SBN we chose it has better pyroelectric properties actually. For pyroelectric applications, this material we chose, and we process via this microprocessing. And similarly here, of course, we again chose the high calcination and the sintering temperatures. The reason remain the same. We process the same system via the conventional heating also, and there we optimize the calcination and the sintering temperature 1200, 1300. So what we did actually, we just we played with the calcination time duration and the sintering time durations actually. And so here also that what we got, actually we got like this we got means better dielectric property, the properties which were comparable, and of course since this SBN is a ferroelectric materials, the loss is less actually compared to the known ferroelectric hydroelectric constant material actually. So and what we did here also, one thing of course, let me I think highlight here actually. Just a minute, I'm going back. What means, yeah, what we did here, this reactive sintering actually. Reactive sintering, what is this reactive sintering means? Knowingly what we did in the this calcination time durations, what we chose like this 20, 30, 45, and the whole purpose of calcination is that we should get the single phase. Okay, that is the whole purpose of the calcination process. Now what happens is that in this particular case, what we did intentionally, we chose the calcite powder in which the single phase formation was not completed, rather means that single like phase formation was incomplete, and then that compaction and pelletization was done, and that sample was then sintered actually, okay, which had the secondary phase in the during the calcination. So during sintering, what will happen is the phase formation was not completed when we expose our specimen to the microwave. So the our this so the heat will be absorbed means by the unreactant precursors, okay, and normally what happens is these reactions which are taking place inside the specimen during the calcium stage, they are exothermic. What does it mean? Like during the reactions, when that is taking place, heat will be released actually. Heat will be released. So in this, so our specimen, they are reacting. So heat will be released, and this heat release heat in the exothermic process, and the microwave absorbed by the our specimen. So means a kind of the supplied heat to the specimen will be magnified actually. So the sintering process will be fast actually, what we call as the reactive sintering. That what we did. So what becomes a disadvantage in the conventional process, that becomes an advantage in the microwave processing. That what we did actually, we tried and we got the like better properties compared to the like what we process for the we compared with our calcium powder, which was in the single phase form actually. That what we say is the this reactive sintering actually. Reactive reaction is also taking place, and sintering means what the grain growth also takes place. That what we call as the reactive sintering. And of course like these properties are there, like we do these electrical characterizations. I'm not going in detail, but we obtain the like the comparable properties. It's not like via this we were getting a kind of like properties were deteriorated actually. And in general, it's not that is not always true that we should get always the better properties. As I means I'm emphasizing, this is some material specific properties there. So like that actually. Okay, just hello. मैं अभी presentation हाँ हाँ बोलो. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Okay, so now this is just a kind of summary what about this BFN system and the SBN system actually. Like means we obtained like the BFN system was calcined 1250 photon, means a single phase was obtained, and we obtained the better electrical properties. This BFN system centered 150 for 30 minutes, and of course like SBN this particular compositions actually. We obtained good pyroelectric properties, as I told. Our whole purpose was of selecting this particular system was for pyroelectric application. So now this the third part, this Sisutuo system. Sisutuo system of course, this is also another known for electric high dielectric constant, is having very high dielectric property at room temperatures actually. And of course, there are issues with this system also, like it has high dielectric loss. So then again, that become an advantage the case of like when we want to process it via the microwave actually. So so here just to highlight what we have achieved actually, I want to save some time for discussion actually. So I will just be highlighting the main part, the basics. I hope I discuss the basics actually. So again, this system, we means we optimize the calcination temperature 850 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes, whereas in journal when we do for conventional heating, the optimized temperature is near about 1100 degrees Celsius. So in the heating temperature and heating duration, as in the conventional, I told it's near about 4 hours. So both the heating temperature and heating durations both were reduced actually. And similarly, then this sintering, we sintered the samples for 30 minutes at 1000 degrees Celsius, 1025, 1050, and 1075 actually. And this heating rate was of course 25 degrees Celsius per minute. So this is so why the heating cycle is very small actually. Of course, this can be much higher actually, much higher. This heating rate can be much higher. 100 degrees Celsius can also be there per minute actually. So that is the what we say the characteristics of microwave processing, because it depends on the how the microwave is being absorbed actually. And we did all this Sisutuo system we obtained in the like we did the ritual analysis, and we means here the side point actually, the like what we obtained of course the secondary phases also. And so what generally what we take the secondary phase, they are they deteriorate the properties. So but this peroxide phase actually, what we means we have done detailed analysis, and means we have come up with this secondary phase in this particular Sisutuo system. Intentionally we produced, and we have seen first we did the characterization, we were seeing the material having the secondary phase, it was showing better dielectric properties. And then we have done the analysis, we come up with the reason also. There is a like this interbarrier layer capacitor model is being there, that under that light we can see how we can account the better dielectric properties with this peroxide secondary phase. And so means yeah, just to here. So here this just to means mention about these materials, both BFN and Sisutuo. Of course, this ferroelectric material, they also have the high dielectric constant, but not so high as this Sisutuo and BFN they have. But of course, then on other hand, then the dielectric constant of the ferroelectric material is much less compared to the Sisutuo systems actually. So so but of course here we are seeing that in somewhat we are able to lower down the dielectric loss. Now the whole plan of going for non-ferroelectric high dielectric constant material is because here in ferroelectric materials there's a what we say, there's a what we call as the Curie temperature is there, and the maximum dielectric constant picks up near the that what we say the transition temperature, Curie temperature. There we get the maximum temperature actually. And near if we want to use the ferroelectric material for chemistry applications, then for the materials means the temperature should be near the transition temperature, because there the dielectric constant is highest actually. But there the temperature near that this Curie temperature, a slight variation in the temperature will lead means a drastic variation of the dielectric properties will be there actually. And that is the biggest drawback of the ferroelectric materials if we want to use for the dielectric applications. But you see here actually this Sisutuo system actually, that when we like with the temperature variation actually, since they are the non-ferroelectric materials. They don't have this what we say the Curie temperature phase transition from, they are not going from kind of ferroelectric to paraelectric stage. So this what we call as the temperature coefficient of capacitance variation, okay, that is very small actually, and that is being that is required for capacitor applications. So and this is what we means the one student, he has just completed, is about he's just in the process submitting that this thesis. We are doing this work actually, and as I was talking about, we have done the analysis how to account this the better dielectric properties with this copper oxide phase. Actually, we have done the, like, we have identified this copper oxide phase is there, kind of melting type of thing. This, of course, we can appreciate here there's a very dense these microstructures, which is a characteristic of the microprocessing is there actually. That's what we obtained, and we have done this spatial distribution analysis of the elements what are being present and analyzed in details. We have seen, as I told, that copper oxide phase is there and how to account that one, and just that we optimize this 1050 degrees Celsius sinking temperatures. We are getting the better dielectric property. Dielectric constant is also high, and of course this dielectric loss becomes less actually. So so this was, we optimize this sinking temperature, and after the time, of course, is half an hour actually, and that was same actually, and that what we have obtained. And so now this, of course, different this parameter means whole summary of this one actually, of this particular compound. Whereas in the just it's a means the point actually that this the temperature variation was 25 degrees. So this temperature 25 degrees Celsius in the conventional heating, it will not produce such a substantial difference in the properties of material actually. But here, as the whole scheme of the like heating is totally different, mechanism totally different. So the small variation in temperature can also lead to the very high, very great change in the properties actually. So of course, as I just told, at 1050 degrees Celsius sintered samples having this copper oxide phase, we are getting the better properties. So that's what we are means we have obtained in this particular system, Sisuto system we have chosen. So, and of course, I've taken the, like, we of course means this BFN was known for electric, the Sisuto was known for electric, and what BFN was ferroelectric system. So ferroelectric can also be processed. Actually, it's not ferroelectric; they are also better candidate for microwave processing actually. But this other non-ferroelectric materials, there's an issue with those materials, but that issue becomes advantage when we want to means when we process it via the microwave technique. So this was the part A. Now means this part B. That's what we are also started this high energy ball milling assisted solid state reaction synthesis of course, we have chosen a. I'll be taking the case of this hydroxyapatite. Of course, we have synthesized these ferroelectric materials also, and so means we have started work means in the biomaterials. So I'll be means so in general I'll be talking about what this technique is there, what and what is the why we go, what is the use of this one, as I try to discuss the case of the micro processing. So here I'll just try to highlight and give some basics about this technique, and I hope means we all are familiar with this nanomaterials. Means so popular actually. So and so to get the nanomaterial or nanoparticle, means there are two approaches, what we call as the bottom up and what we call as the top down. So the it's a very simple in simple language, like we start like when we start like from the atomic scale, and we combine and kind of gelation and the collize type of things, that type of things takes place, and we come up to the nanomaterial, what we say the one 1 nanometer to the 1000 nanometer, that the particle size lies in that range, what we call as the nano materials actually. And I'll discuss why means what is the utility of having nanomaterials in relation to the functional materials. Our topic is the processing of functional material. I'll discuss that part also. So I'm just trying to build the basics about why we means we are using this high energy ball milling actually. And there's a bottom up approach actually, like we try to arrange the smaller components, and we means, and that's how we come to the nanoparticle stage. Of course, the less than nano is the atomic scale, and from the atomic scale, like when we try to combine, and then we come up with the nano range, that what we call as the bottom up approach actually. So our the starting stage involves the particle in the atomic scale actually. That's what we call as the bottom approach. And the top down approach, of course, what we means our starting stage is the, like in the bulk, what we say bulk stage actually, like okay, what we deal with the day-to-day life actually. And then a kind of hammering type of things, breaking, keep on breaking, keep on breaking. That's a top down, okay. And then we via breaking and bringing down the, like the these components in the nanoscale, what we say the 1 nanometer to the 1000 nanometers. That's what we say the this and top down approach. So this slides shows actually bottom up approach. We start the like the atomic scale, the clusters, and then we it means reach to the nanoparticle stage. We arrange so that okay, that our particles remain in this particular stage actually. Then what we say, they should not further combine and form the bigger particles. And in the case of the top down process, as I just told, and the bulk one, and then we break, and we bring it down into the nanoparticle stage. So now there are three types of methods are there. There are physical methods of obtaining the nanoparticle. There are chemical method of obtaining obtaining a nanoparticle. There are biological methods of obtaining nanoparticles. Okay, so so these chemical methods which are generally used to obtain the nanoparticles actually, and they are the simple, they are inexpensive. The temperature involved is relatively low. It's in general it's mentioned, not always 350, and doping can also be easily done, and of course means so why chemical means methods we synthesize the materials actually. There is a Sol-Gel technique, what with the chemical techniques that is there, and so that is being generally being used actually with this for the nanoparticles synthesis. But here the big issue, of course I'll tell that issue. So these are the what the chemical techniques, it has a kind of advantages. So the chemical techniques, they are there actually. These biological techniques are there. I'm not I'm just mentioning, I don't know details about this, but these techniques are also there, kind of these bacterias and these yeast, fungi. I mean, they can be used to synthesize the nanoparticles. It's a kind of they eat up the materials, and they in that way that they break up the materials actually. So this field is also there. Somebody interested, they can they can take up this one via synthesizing the nanoparticles. So now, as our interest is the high energy ball milling, I'll be okay. I mean, so I will take the discussion toward that side actually. So these physical methods are also there. There are mechanical methods are there, and there are these what we say the vapor methods are there of synthesizing nanoparticles. So so this high energy ball milling, that is there. Let me discuss some issues with other than high energy ball milling techniques, and then highlight the advantages of the high energy ball milling, and what are the issues why people are not using in general. So this currently available, mostly these chemical techniques of synthesizing these nanoparticles, they are expensive, they are environmentally harmful. Why? Because a lot of these gases, harmful gases comes out actually. those who are working, they know better actually. And this is very means the final yield is very small actually. This chemical techniques actually. So this is a big disadvantage actually. And as I was means I told ki I will tell ki why, what is the utility of discussing these nanoparticles under this functional materials. What happens once if we have our starting precursors in the nanoparticle form? So the properties like what we say, the whole reaction mechanism, the synthesis temperatures, time, that will decrease actually. One way of decreasing we have already discussed the decreasing of time and temperature by microwave processing. And here this if our starting precursors in the nanoparticle form, because the nanoparticles are there, the reactivity will be fast actually. Okay, the reactivity is inversely proportional to particle size actually. And so it's a kind of diffusion will be fast actually. And so they will fastly means reacting among themselves. Reaction will be fast. So via this, the temperature our processing temperature comes down. Our what we say, the temperature and the time also comes down. So this is so why means we are interested in this what we say, this high energy ball milling for obtaining the nanoparticles in the process of forming the functional materials. So as I told, this energy ball milling is the top down approach. Okay, top down approach. And whereas this of course we have seen that one. So top down approach. And this basically mostly this energy ball milling is used in the metallurgical field actually. Like there are some issues I will discuss that those issues why in generally this is not being used actually. We try to come over that one. Let us see, that means I'll discuss it. So this why that, of course these are the features via this energy ball milling. And so there are these various this milling devices, they are being there. Okay, of course in the home also we use. And what we call, and what type of these processes that takes place during this like if we use a particular like means balls. Okay, inert this zirconia balls, generally we use refractory type of balls. They should not react with our specimen powder. And means then this various this metallurgical these processes they takes place. Okay, and means when these balls are colliding and in between the particles are there. And of course, as the name is telling that it's a high energy, the rotation speed should be high actually. And of course, this what we say, this mechanochemistry, this term was introduced by this Friedrich Wilhelm Oswald. And he got Nobel Prize in chemistry. And means this is a mechanochemistry actually. So what we call it is high energy. This is a mechanochemical synthesis. What happens? I'll be talking about what happens. This here, our starting reactants are there, and depending on the ball impact energy imparted to these reactants, this means during the milling stage itself, the reaction can start actually. During the milling stage means you need not to go for the calcination stage. So this is, and of course the particle reduction also takes place actually. So this is a what we say, the big advantage of this energy ball milling. So directly during the milling stage, the calcination takes place and the particle size is reduced. And of course, here these are the other parameter how to find out these milling intensities in terms of this one, like this how much the energy is, the ball energy, this energy is imparted to the moles actually. Okay, this which are being used the high energy ball milling. Here we can see these balls are there, small powders. Small powders, they are the like our specimen powder is there. And this whole this rotation is taking place very high speed actually. And via that this of course the collision will be there. And so and in between like particles are there, as we have seen the different stages are there. So this particle will be broken, and broken particle reduce, particle size will reduce, and in turn they will react among themselves also at room temperature. And phase formation will take place. And so now here this let me tell the advantage of energy ball milling compared to the other techniques. And so the big advantage is that we can means use our these oxides and the carbonates powders what do we use in the our solid state reaction technique actually. The starting precursors which are cheap, very cheap compared to the chemicals what do we use in the chemicals processes. And the here the since our starting precursors are in the oxide and the carbonate forms, the yields remains very high actually, very high. And very this is the big advantage actually. Yield is high and the starting and the yield is high, and the this is cost effective also. It's a cost effective. So for large batch processing, of course, means for industrial, you means what is the productions we require, this should be cheap actually. And large batch processing should be possible actually. So and this is the like this energy ball milling has these advantages actually, like this what we have this high energy ball milling setup in our lab actually. That's what we have. As I told, it's a relatively means like inexpensive. Well, of course, means they are foreign make system also. They're Indian make this one. So we tried to obtain nanoparticles of this biomaterial hydroxyapatite, and we obtained this particle size. I'll be telling the milling parameters what we have used. We obtained this particle size in the 27 nanometer to 60 nanometer, well within the range of the nanoparticles. We were able to reduce, and what we did actually, we calcined this energy ball milled powder, and while in the microwave furnace actually 700 800 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes. Okay, and we obtained the single phase, whereas in general when we use this conventional powder, we use the conventional furnace, the calcination takes near about 1100 actually. And sintering we did 950 and 1000 degrees Celsius. 1000 degrees Celsius we are getting the better properties comparable to the what, and whereas in the conventional by conventional means the optimized sintering temperature is 1300. So this is a very drastic decrease of the temperatures and the time, of course, here also the 15 minutes time and temperature both they are reduced actually. So whereas but ordinarily we use the chemical processes to obtain the nanoparticles, and but then of course that is just only for research purpose. But via this technique, that it means we can go for the industry, like for large scale productions, because this is cost effective. And during this like sintered samples 950 and 1000 degrees, since we have used the microwave, the particles that remains in the nanoparticles, nano stage actually, particles in the nano stage. That what we have seen. And in terms of the mechanic, of course, this hydroxyapatites bioceramics, and for implant orthopedic applications, we did this what is the mechanical characterizations, that what, and dielectric, of course, these dielectric properties of these bioceramics, they enhance their bio activity, means within the like means other tissues so that we did this. This work is going on actually. The present one student is doing. And now coming to the big issue related to this high energy ball milling, not why it's not being used in greater extent. Well, the big issue is like the chamber what we are using, and so there, because it's bolts are rotating very high speed, actually time duration is also very high, actually 10 hours normally. So this contamination issue is the big issue in this high energy ball milling. And we have also seen, we did the EDX, and we obtained this unwanted this aluminum, this our like the jar we were using, this aluminum means and we were getting this aluminum unwanted, this peak was coming actually. So that this is a big issue in the case of like energy ball milling. So that what we did the dry milling. We didn't use the like the media and we tried with we reduced the rotation speed also, time durations also. And so with then, why that we get rid of this the aluminum peak should have been there, but it was not there actually. We get rid of this what we say this impurities. And so then, and as I told, we are doing this the ferroelectric materials, they are also being processed by energy ball milling, and we have obtained this calcination temperature. We are means mind you, we are using these carbonates oxide powders actually, and normally this the calcium temperature near about 1300 degree in the case of barium titanate, but we are obtaining single phase in 950 for 15 minutes. Of course, for the high energy bulk milk powders, which are calcined via microwave actually. So this is about all this one. This so these are like we have means synthesis. I mean, we are using microwave means assisted iron bulk milk synthesis, and we have synthesized hydroxyapatite barium titanate. We are obtaining better property, 1000 degrees Celsius. This work, and this issue was there with the this impurity that we we got rid of by this what we say called we call as the dry milling. So now finally means in conclusion and so now means microwave processing and of course I discussed the sinus ball milling also. So this it saves time, of course we can appreciate, I hope, and provides internal volumetric heating. Heating profile is different compared to conventional. Uniform heating, ability to achieve very high temperatures we can achieve. Fine microstructure, I discussed better mechanical properties due to better microstructure, spare quality of sinter powders, nano powder, metallic processing is possible. Okay, somebody interested, I can discuss that. Metallic, generally metals, they reflect the microwaves. Once we have this metal in the nano powder, nano foam, then there is what we say the skin depth. The skin depth comes into the nano foam, and so via that the microwave will be absorbed. So in the bringing down the metallic powder in the nano foam, the nano powder, the metallic powder can also be processed. But in general, metal they reflect the microwaves, and of course this is what we say the material dependent, and just hello. Then this yeah, there's a high energy ball milling, that's a large production. This is a big advantage, is economical, and issue remains the contamination issue remains actually. So this is all about from my side, and this work what I presented these students whose degree this degree award year in which, so this very these students they have worked on this field actually. Recently, Deepika has also like we synthesize these multi-frac materials uh, via microwave, and like this Naresh, he worked on this SBN, and Subrat, he worked on SBN system, and presently there's Sujata is working on hydroxyapatite. So this is all about, and this we got the this project, and from there we obtain the facilities, and we have this facilities in our lab actually. Somebody interested, we are most welcome. We have this all this setup. So that's all from my side. uh, Sima ma'am, I think I'm well within time, huh?
Yeah, you are well within time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pawan. We were delighted to hear you. Now I'm opening the house for the questions. If there is any question, please raise your hand. I will unmute you and you can ask your question. So first question is from Divya Kumari. Yeah, Divya, you can ask your question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir. Sir, hello.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to ask if my compound contains iron, then we can use iron balls as milling in our
Yeah. Means generally, as I told, this high energy ball milling, particularly this is being used in the like for magnetic material. There is no issue actually. Like of course, already your material contains iron. Then whatever if some what we call as impurity, that will no more be impurity for you actually.
Means, sir, if there will be contamination in case of liquid media or dry
No, no,
hygiene?
contamination generally what we say, na, if you are using this like the jar actually, from where there normally this comes actually this, if you use so actually this jar should be this zirconia bowl should be there, as the bowls are what the bowls also zirconia what do we use, they are highly refractory. But like for these metallic materials, iron particularly, you can use this the steel jars also. No issue. Then the contamination will not be there. Means will not be so pronounced. It will not affect your property so much actually, because already your means jar is of like this. It contains iron actually.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.